Hello and welcome to Elevate Your Wealth. I'm Casey Elkins, Managing Partner at Elevated Financial Management. I'm joined by Mark Stimpson, my friend, father-in-law, and business partner. How you doing, Mark?
I'm doing really good, Casey. I'm excited again, as we are every week, to be able to talk about things that I think everyone that's needing to retire or getting close to retire should know. And we got a good show lined up for today, and hopefully share some ideas that is going to be very, very valuable to everyone that's maybe thinking about retirement or planning right now, or maybe just entered the retirement world.
Yeah, you know, we talk about this day in and day out. We talk about this weekly on the show, whether it be TV or radio. We're always talking about these retirement topics, and I think sometimes maybe what gets missed is we're always hitting the financial aspect of it, right? And we're focused on that, of course, because that's so important, right? But there's also the emotional piece to this too, right? And I think a lot of times that's overlooked for retirees, maybe not spending time really understanding how this the actual retirement itself is going to affect them emotionally, how that's going to affect their day-to-day life. And so my first question is this, and I'll throw this to you, Mark. How can someone be mentally prepared to retire, to leave their career, to leave their job? How can they prepare for that?
And it can be very much a challenge. Casey and I talk about this on pretty much every show that we do. It is such a challenge to get someone to go from, being a saver to a spender.
Right.
They've dealt with that pain, of discipline their whole life. They saved money, they built it up. And it's so hard for them to switch, right? To go from a saver to a spender. And so that's where the emotional part of this planning is so critical for us. One of the things that we try and do with every client that comes in, I spend a fair amount of time. I want them to tell me exactly what they want their retirement to look like.
Right.
I tell them to put the money aside, the concerns about that. What do you want to do in retirement? Tell me a little bit about that. And I make them expound on that because they've never been asked that before, right? They're like, my guy never even thought about this or asked me any questions about it. Where do they want to live, right? These are all things that they're going to have to deal with. We've done shows on have you really talked with your spouse about all the things you'd like to do in retirement? Are you going down the same runway? We find that a lot of clients aren't. I don't want to have, it happens to us all the time, but I don't want a client to look at the wife and she just shared with both of us, the husband and me, about something that she wanted to do, and he looked at her and goes, I had no idea that that's what you wanted to do.
It does happen.
See, and yet they might have been married 40 or 50 years.
Right.
See, and that we see this all the time, right? And it is a concern because if we don't address and talk about these things, the emotional side actually can begin to become more of an issue than the money side, right? So they're connected, and too much in this type of planning, you mentioned it, it just gets kind of tossed to the side and nobody wants to deal with it, but we do. That's one of the things that we focus on in our office.
Yeah, and one of the ways we can really folks can really be successful with that as they're approaching retirement, as they're going to quit their job, is retiring to something, not retiring from something, right? Because if we retire from something, that psychological aspect of it is us looking backwards, right, at our glory days or things that we miss, or, oh, I wish I still had that or this. And realistically, we want to look forward to what's coming, right? We want to be excited about what's in the future for us. And so having that excitement as to something new and different and getting to finally cross those things off the list, but we have to have that list of what it is, right? That's, as you mentioned, right? What are those goals? What does it really look like? And very commonly when we ask people, what are your goals? They say, well, I'd like to have X amount in my accounts, and I'd like to see this average rate of return, and hey, I'm with you, right? I want you to have all kinds of growth too, and I want you to have all the money in the world. But the only reason you have that is to actually live the retirement that you want to live, right? And so that emotional piece is so important for us to make sure that we're helping set folks up for retirement. Now, many people do struggle after leaving their career, right? We see this a lot. And realistically, it was their social circle.
That's a big one.
Yeah, that's where their friends were at. And even if, they were irritated by Rosa down the hall or whoever it was, at the end of the day, they had people there that they likely enjoyed being around, right? And so now they're starting to miss that. What can folks do to combat that as they approach retirement and once they're in retirement to make sure that they're not looking at what's behind and missing what they've left.
Yeah, one of the things that as we deal with the emotional side of this type of planning is, I want, especially maybe the males, they have an inner circle, right, of friends, usually at work. They might have had beers with them on a regular basis after work, especially my Boeing clients. But I want them to begin to think about how are they going to replace that part of their social life, because that is critical. You mentioned that. If you don't have friends that you're going to be able to do things with, plan things with, maybe do some traveling with. For me, I love to play a little golf, right? As you know, I like to plan a trip every year with my close inner circle, right? I want to have that and have my clients develop that, because if you lose all of that with your workmates and you don't replace it with some, you're not going to be happy, and you're going to be struggling with certain things when it comes to retirement. And especially if your spouse is continuing to work, right? What are you going to do while she's at work and you have 8 hours, 10 hours a day, and everybody, so many don't have a plan for that, right? So what are they going to do? And that's a big part of what we want to discuss with our clients.
Right, and so ultimately you can give yourself permission. Right? You give yourself permission to ease into retirement, to find those new hobbies, to connect with new people, just to connect with other people that are retiring. Set those lunch dates, put those things together, right? And try to expand that circle so that you're not feeling like a man on an island, right? You're not just feeling alone out there after you've retired. That's not what this is about, because we don't always get right to that trip to Disneyland with the grandkids. We don't always get right to those things, right? Sometimes there's a little middle area, and ultimately the rest of the year is filled with other things that we're doing in our day-to-day life. So we want to address it accordingly. So for our folks at home, we've got a special offer. Mark, would you let them know what that is?
Yeah, for our next 5 callers, we're going to build a written plan just for you. So if you've heard things on the show today that are maybe causing a little bit of anxiety or concerns, you're worried about market volatility, taxes, how should I take money out of my different retirement accounts, please pick up the phone and call 844-342-7142. Leave your checkbook at home. If you saved at least $250,000 or more and you don't have a written plan and you're concerned about your retirement and the trajectory that it may be on, please, we want to help. We're just going to have a conversation. So again, please pick up the phone and call 844-342-7142.
Thank you very much, Mark. Again, for those listening at home, the number's on the screen. There's a QR code to make it easy for you. Please take advantage of that special offer. It's complimentary, no obligation, a written financial plan put together by our team of certified financial planners. When we come back, we're going to talk more about the risks in retirement, talk about that emotional piece and how that affects everybody as they move towards retirement and ultimately take the step into retirement themselves. Don't change the dial. Come back to Elevate Your Wealth.
Call 844-342-7142 right now for your own written financial plan. Having a clear path to retirement is more than just your savings. This review will include a complete risk analysis on your portfolio, a deep dive fee X-ray to determine how much you are and could be paying on those investments, a tax reduction report, and healthcare and legacy planning for you and your estate. To begin your retirement readiness review, call Casey, Mark, and the team at 844-342-7142 or use the QR code to schedule your appointment right away. Whether your retirement is coming soon or you want to be certain you can stay retired, the written financial plan will help guide you through your retirement planning journey. Call Mark, Casey, and the team at 844-342-7142 or use the QR code to schedule your meeting today.
Back to Elevate Your Wealth. I'm Casey Elkins here with Mark Stimson. We're talking about some emotional issues that can come up in retirement or as we're planning for retirement that many people fail to deal with. And, we've discussed a couple of them already, but we want to talk more about living a less than retirement. This is something that we see folks do every day, and realistically they do it because they don't have a plan. But what is a less than retirement? What that really means is you've had the plans to do all these things, and yet you don't really actually execute them because you're worried about how market volatility is going to affect you, the risk and those things that you're taking. And so we want to make sure that you don't live a less than retirement. We don't want that for any of our clients, right? And so a lot of times what causes folks to live that less than retirement mark is the what ifs, right? That's a big part of it, keeps folks up at night. So share with us more about the what ifs and how that really plays in.
Yeah, this is something that we believe is an issue for probably the majority of the clients that come in and see us or our students at our workshops. You know, becoming a spender is an issue when you've been a saver your whole retirement life, right? And Tom Hegna, a very well-known economist here in the United States, does such a good job of explaining the what if, because so many retirees have dreamed about maybe joining a country club or buying a boat or traveling the world. And so they save their money, they save their money, and they save their money. And then what happens? They die. Then what happens to the money? Well, the money goes to the children, right? And what do the children do once they get the money? They join the country club, they buy the boat, they travel the world, right? It's not that we don't want to help our children do that if at all possible, but wouldn't it be wonderful if you did that? This is your retirement. I tell clients all the time when we do this type of planning, this is about your retirement, not your children's inheritance. And there's ways to still pass what's left, but we don't want you to live the what-if retirement. We want to have a plan so that you're confident that you can spend money and enjoy the things that you dreamed about and it not just be a complete fairy tale.
That's it, yeah. And so many people have these concerns, right, about the market, about long-term care, all these items, and they kind of are hanging out there, right? And people are saying, well, I feel kind of confident about my retirement, got my Social Security, I've got a nice nest egg. But there's these worries, and they kind of choose to push them off a little bit, right? And that's really what causes that less than retirement. And you didn't save these funds so that you could worry about them, right? You save these funds to take care of you, to live the life that you want to live in retirement. And realistically, if we can tie this into some actual finances that are going on right now, when we look at the market. We have a slide that we'd like to share with you, and this is really in reference to stocks versus bonds. And so if we look previously at this last year, there's been in 2022, I should say, there's been some struggles in the stock market, right? And ultimately, if your stocks are struggling, where do you look to have some security, to have some level of safety? It's bonds, right? And that's been the idea for quite some time. That's where everybody turns to have some level of protection, to create that diversification. The idea is that when bonds are down, our stocks will be flat, but they'll still be producing some level of income, maybe increasing. That's always been the thought. And so folks have this kind of split between stocks and bonds. So we have this image that we'd like to share with you, this screen, and we'll talk through this. You can kind of see this here together as we look at it. So in 2022, the S&P 500, that's the line over on the far right. You'll see that it's down 19.45% for 2022. Now here's the comparison. There's a second line on that graph, and it's the 20-year Treasury ETF. And you'll notice all the way at the far right, it's down 32.68%. So what does that really mean? That means that the risk that you were taking in the market left you negative 19.45%, and the money in bonds that was supposed to be safe is almost down 33% for the year. That is a big concern. Thank you very much, guys, for that image. Now, what it really boils down to is simply that this is something that keeps folks up at night. This is what causes people to live a less than retirement when they're not truly invested in the right way, and they know it. People feel this internally, right? People, they come into the office and they say, well, I think I'm doing okay. I'm not quite sure, but it's because they don't understand it. They haven't had that conversation with their advisors so that they do understand how they're investing. That's a big concern. What do you think about that, Mark?
Yeah, that is something, because that chart really helps to illustrate that 2022 was very unique. Normally, if bonds are down, stocks are up, or vice versa. Last year, there was nowhere to run. Stocks were down, like that chart showed, almost 20%, and bonds were down even worse, 32%. So where do you run, right? You have to have a plan for that. And that's where it's nice to be able to possibly draw on a bucket of money that isn't taking when your bonds and your stocks are. That's why BlackRock has pretty much made it clear. If you try and live by the old modern portfolio theory of 60-40, how would you have done last year?
Yeah.
You would have been crushed, not just hurt a little bit, you would have been spanked bad. And so what we don't want to see is that. You've got to be able to go somewhere when times are tough. And the old playbook has got to be thrown out right now. We believe that. There's a new playbook, where like that old saying goes, there's a new sheriff in town, and you need to understand who he is and be able to deal with him in the right way.
Right. If you know, I mean, we think about that, right? The 19% down, around 19, a little bit more, over 30% down. Collectively, that's a huge loss for folks. And I mean, I want everybody at home to think about this. If that's where you're looking to produce the income in your retirement, you will live a less than retirement.
Exactly.
You will live a what if retirement where you're not going to get to do the things you want. You're not going to live those golden years because you're concerned, you're worried about it. And honestly, if you're invested like that, rightfully so.
Yeah,
that is concerning,
exactly.
right? And I fully support that. This is where it comes down to having a plan. As you mentioned, Mark, this is where it comes down to setting things up in the right way and having something unique and adjustable for that particular individual, and something that's going to grow and change and adjust over their lifetime. So we want to make sure that we let the folks know at home what we've got prepared for them today. Mark, would you share with them what that is?
Yes, for the next 5 callers, I know some of the things we're talking about today is probably causing a little bit of angst, a little bit of concern. And if that's you, please get off the couch, keep your checkbook at home. Maybe you've saved at least $250,000 or more, and you've got these concerns. You're worried about where your retirement might be headed. Pick up the phone, call 844-342-7142, because if you do that, we're going to develop a written plan just for you that's done by our certified financial team, and it's not going to cost you one penny. So please pick up the phone, call 844-342-7142, and let's just come in, have a conversation, and see if there aren't going to be some ways that we're going to be able to help you.
Thank you very much, Mark. Again, for those listening at home, this is a special offer for our first 5 callers. It's complimentary, no obligation. The number's on the screen, 844-342-7142. We'll put together that written financial plan just for you. There's also a QR code on the screen that you can use. Please take advantage of that as well. When we come back, we're going to talk more about seizing the day in retirement and the banking crisis. What's going on there? Don't change the channel. Come back to Elevate Your Wealth.
The work never seems to end until the day it finally does. After nearly a lifetime on the job, you should be rewarded for all the time you spent working. Whether that's crossing off items on your bucket list, learning a new passion, or rekindling the love of an old one. After all, life isn't over when you stop working. It's the start of an all-new chapter. The one where you're the writer and you get to choose how your story will go. A way to achieve that is by having a clear financial plan to sustain your golden years. The biggest fear most retirees have is if they'll have enough money to maintain the lifestyle they've always enjoyed. Having a plan to help protect you against the curveballs life often throws will help to maintain your lifestyle. Call today to get your free written financial plan so you may live every day to the fullest and enjoy the retirement of your dreams.
Welcome back to Elevate Your Wealth. I'm Casey Elkins here with Mark Stimson. We're talking about the emotional aspect of retirement and how that ties in. The finances are one thing, but what about being mentally prepared to make sure that we live the retirement that we want to live? Something that we see quite a bit is folks not seizing the day in retirement. I mean, ultimately, Mark, this is the time to go for it, right? This is it. This is what you've been waiting for. This is what you've been building. You've been looking forward to this for years and years, and yet some people get right to that finish line of their career, right at the starting line of their retirement, and a few years later, they're just still kind of hanging around, right? It's like failure to launch almost, right? They haven't gone for it. And this is it. I mean, we talk about the go-go years, the slow-go years, and the no-go years, right? And you know, it's maybe kind of a funny way to put it, but we talk about it because it's true. And when you have those go-go years, when you still have your health, you've got those assets, this is the time to go for it. And people miss out on this all the time. We don't want that to happen for folks. And so what can be done to combat that? What would you say to the listeners at home to make sure that they're going for it in retirement?
In fact, I'm glad you mentioned that, Casey, because in our office, I know Brian talks about this all the time too. I want to be able to go down in my go-go years and take my grandkids down to Disneyland and want to get on all the rides with them. Okay, that may not be happening when we get into our mid to later 80s, right?
Yeah.
Or even our 70s if our health isn't good, right? So again, do you have a plan to allow you to do that, right? That's what we're talking about. Where is the income going to come? Because what we want to do is make sure that our clients have more income on the front end, right, of that retirement. Now, not true for everybody. That's why it's customized to you. But I think we'd all agree, I'd rather use more of my money at the beginning of my retirement than at the end, because at the end, I may not be going anywhere. You know, I may be glad just to be able to do certain basic things that we have to do in life, right?
Yeah.
When I'm maybe stuck at home. Or in an assisted living facility. So we need a plan for that, right? And if we have a plan, it's going to allow us to feel confident enough to want to spend our money, right? You've built it up. Don't let it go, you know, and just be passed on to your children. I really care very much about my clients creating memories now, not later.
Absolutely.
How important is that versus giving them a chunk of money? Do things with your kids, your grandkids, that they will talk about for the rest of their life. They'll be talking about that, right, when you're gone. I'll never forget a client that paid for his grandbaby's education, and what a legacy that he left for them. They talked about that when they were in college, and then they were gone, right? And so these are the type of things that we can do now. Don't wait till the end to try and do the things that I think we all want to do in retirement.
That's it. You know, so many people push it off, right?
Yeah.
And ultimately, you know, if we think back to that chart again that we just showed a few minutes ago, with those types of losses, that's what causes people to push off doing things in retirement.
Yeah,
they're going to take the trip next year, right? They're going to do the addition to the house next year. They're going to remodel the kitchen next year, because they're worried. They just saw that their account lost so much money. Well, I can't go spend and do the things I want to do. That's the problem when we only have one singular source for income in retirement, right? If we got Social Security and we're relying on the market and that's it, I mean, that's a big issue, right? And it causes people to, again, live a less than retirement, to not seize the day, to not take advantage. And we don't want that for anybody, right?
I liken it to the Seattle Mariners. They've been in a rebuilding mode, and I know how much you love the Mariners. I do too. But you know what? They've been rebuilding for almost 40 some years. When is that going to ever change, right?
We don't need to talk about that anymore.
Yeah,
Mark.
I know.
Yeah, get me upset.
But the point is, do you want your retirement to be like that, right? We don't.
Right.
We want you to get to the World Series. We want to have you pass the finish line so that you actually do the things that you hoped and dreamed you would be able to do. But again, I think if you don't have a plan and you just wing it, you might not be as successful as you could be.
Yeah, well, I'll just say that the Mariners are going all the way in 2023, so you hold your breath on that one, okay?
Yeah, exactly.
But you know, here's the other piece to this, right? Not doing what we want to do in retirement, living a less than retirement, all of that, it's because we haven't addressed the concerns that are out there, right? And there's something that's top of mind for a lot of folks right now, and rightfully so. It's the banking crisis, right? That's a big potential issue. I mean, we think of Silicon Valley Bank, a couple other banks that have had issues. We see it in the news all the time. I mean, that's really a big concern for everybody, but especially retirees, right? So, well, I mean, what would you say about that, Mark, for folks listening at home?
What I'm trying to get my clients to do is take a deep breath, right? And as to mention, to go along with what Casey just mentioned, is I just saw an internet report that close to 290 regional banks. Now, this is not the big banks. This isn't U.S. Bank, Bank of America, Wells Fargo. But 290 regional banks could be in some trouble right now. In fact, just yesterday, we were down here filming, and I got a call from a client in Seattle. And her brother had called her from Thailand and said to her, you better get all of your money out of the bank because all the banks in the United States are going to fail. Well, for me, that's still a little crazy. And from this perspective, even if we do take the money out of the bank, where are we going to put it?
Right.
Are you going to shove it into your mattress? That's probably not going to work too well for you. And then inflation is going to hurt us. So again, I want everybody to take a little bit deep breath, and we'll figure out a plan. But again, this crisis has caused a lot of anxiety for everybody, and we understand that, right? And again, but if you have a plan, you're going to probably be less anxious about it, especially if we've dealt and we've got some guarantees on our money, as best as we can do in this system of things, right? Then that's going to help them to feel good about, you know, not taking go ahead and take the trip that you were worried about. You can't, if you just worry about every negative thing in the world today, I will promise you this, none of us are going to go anywhere. Right? And we don't want you to feel that way. So take a deep breath, and we want our clients to know they're going to be okay.
Yeah, and I'll just add an illustration of this, right? We talk about the bank run, right? People have started taking lots of cash out, and that's still a top of mind thing for a lot of folks. But realistically, we want to be very careful about that, right? When you, it's almost a self-fulfilling prophecy, right? So if you think back to when COVID first started, there was a big run on toilet paper, right? We were going to run out of toilet paper. So what did everybody do? They ran to Costco, they bought a year's worth of toilet paper. And what did that cause? That caused the issue that everybody was concerned about, and it's the same with the banks. We have to be strategic with what we're doing. It's important to make sure that we understand the risk that we're taking there, but at the same time, not backing ourselves into a corner and creating the very problem that we're concerned with. Yeah. Now, we want to balance that at the same time with really understanding that risk. And I just want to point this out. I wrote it down with the specific intent of making sure I get this right. Just in the past few months, Silicon Valley Bank, Signature Bank, and First Republican Bank have failed, right? We understand that. Their combined assets surpassed those held by the 25 banks that collapsed at the height of the financial crisis. Right. That is a big concern. Yeah. That is a lot to be worried about. We get why folks are worried. This is why we need a plan, right? So we know what our income looks like in the future. So for our folks listening at home, we have an offer for them to take advantage of a written financial plan. Mark, would you share with them what that looks like, what that entails?
Yeah, for our next 5 callers, like Casey mentioned, we know that you're possibly very concerned about the banking and what's happening in that world. The government, they can't even agree on a debt ceiling right now, which could cause angst for everybody and big problems. So please, know that we understand that. We just want to have a conversation. So if you're concerned about any of the things that we've talked about today, please pick up the phone and call 844-342-7142, because we're going to develop a written plan specifically for you that's developed by our team of certified financial planners. So again, that's 844-342-7142. Let us help. Let's have a conversation. Keep the checkbook at home. Come in and see us and see if there isn't some things that we can do to put you on that path to a wonderful retirement.
It's been really nice being with you again, Mark. It's always nice to talk through this. I think we did something a little different today, right? Talking about that emotional aspect. And that's a big piece for retirees at home, and we know that. And we talk with everybody about it that comes into our office. How are you going to feel when you retire? What can you do to be successful, not only from a financial perspective, but how can we make sure that you're successful from an emotional perspective? And what does that overall plan look like? So don't leave it to chance. Take advantage of this offer. Our entire intent is to help you, to make sure that we build something strong for you in the future. We always love having you with us. We love the Seattle area. We love the Mariners, as Mark talked about earlier. We're local guys just like you. We're just going to do our best we can to help you out. So come right back next week to elevate your wealth.